Inclusion is a fundamental shift in how we see people, build communities, and define progress. In this film, we hear from Carmo Noronha, secretary at Bethany Society, Shillong, whose decades of work show us what happens when you start designing systems where everyone can thrive. From building inclusive classrooms to leveraging ICT for opportunity, from grassroots legal awareness to leadership by people with disabilities themselves. This isn't theory, this is rethinking education.
It's my 31st year working in Bethany Society. As an organization, we were started 41 years ago. So we come from a mainstreaming background, and also the strategy was always inclusion. I myself, before I joined the organization, for 25 years, I was in mainstream education, teaching in mainstream schools across the country. Our founder was a very inspirational leader. Her focus was health. And she started off by saying that if we give a very good foundation to the mother and the child, especially in rural areas, we are actually building the foundations of a very strong society. So when it comes to disability then, we took on disability and at that time no one was actually looking at disability. And the focus was always that you need to separate them and you need to have special programs for them. And then what actually happened was that if you wanted to have special programs, then you needed to have people who were specialized to look after them. And they were really not available. So what happened then was that the persons with disability, children, adults, were just left behind. They were left to fend for themselves. So they couldn't get into the mainstream. Neither could they get focus in the specialized system. And this I'm talking about across the Northeast, also perhaps in other parts of the country. And hence, you required a strategy that would reach out to the margins, to the people in rural areas. And Meghalaya is an agrarian society. 90% of the people are working on the land. They are in remote villages. And so obviously 90% of people with disability would be in rural areas. So that is so with that background, and I think that I was very lucky when I joined the organization in 1994-95 that there was a lot of international and national movement on how to reach out to rural areas. And the whole concept of CBR came then, community-based rehabilitation, which looked at cross-disability, which didn't look at only blind people, only deaf people in the villages. You couldn't go into a village and say, look, we are only going to look at developmental disability. What about the others? So a whole cross-sectoral and cross-disability movement started. And I think of course, it was in Africa and South America, but I think India took the lead, particularly through civil society organizations and through parents' groups.
What steps have you taken to support or enhance education for children with disabilities?
When it came to education, as I said earlier, we actually put children into mainstream schools, and the staff went around supporting these teachers and these schools, and also advocating for children to be in school and not in special schools. And what happened then was, after we started education for the blind and other children with disability in the Garo Hills, which is where we had started, we came to the Khasi Hills. Our founder came to the Khasi Hills, and there was no school for the blind here. So she actually established a school for the blind here in this campus. And very, very soon after that, we realized that this would not work, that we needed to become inclusive. And so we started a whole process of reverse inclusion where we opened the doors to children with other disabilities and also children who had seemingly no disabilities. Okay, and one of the things that we did after a few years was Bertha, who is actually visually impaired, was appointed as the principal of the school, and she was 14 years principal of the school, and then she took it as a challenge to move from a special school to an inclusive school. And one of the first things that we did was to get our school affiliated with the State Board of Education, because we said that they should not follow a special curriculum, they should follow the state curriculum and show people that it's possible for all children to learn together. And that was the focus, that children have a right to learn together. Children should not be segregated. And in fact, one of our slogans was, "We only segregate garbage." And we literally do that as a livelihood activity for other persons with disability, where all the organic matter we convert into compost and we convert it into a resource. So and we said that if you segregate garbage, then the individual components become resources. And then if you put children together, then individually and as a group, they become resources. We got affiliated with the state board. Then, we went on to higher secondary. We set up a higher secondary school. And then with higher secondary, we started advocating for these children to go into mainstream colleges. And we supported them. So after they finished class 12, we are actually advocated, and we went to hostels that are here in colleges, and we urged the management to admit them in hostels so that they would be seen, and then they would start mixing with each other, and they would be able to then, look at the strengths of people rather than looking at impairments and disability. So that was and especially in education, I think the focus was looking at educating all children, but not educating only the children with disability. And so we adopted this framework of universal design for learning, which is new and which is now progressing, but which looks at education, and it moves away from disability and looks at variability in the classroom. So if you have 50 children, all of them are different and all of them learn differently. So can we educate them? And so once the students finished college, they have their networks, especially the visually impaired, the hearing impaired. Some are in Delhi, some are in Mumbai, some are in things. They realized that computers is very important. And then we took on ICT as a very important part of learning, of a means to learn. And these guys now some are working in Infosys, some are working in Accenture, WebEx. They are doing extremely well in the ICT sector. And the advantage that we had was many of the companies said, look, give us 15 years of education with a good background in English and we'll do the rest. So the advantage of people from the Northeast was that they speak English very well. And Bertha herself, who was an English teacher and was very kind of insistent that we teach them good spoken English skills. So that was, that's how the education went. And then we are now promoting this across the state, across districts, especially when we had this 5 years project on RAISE Northeast, which is Regional Action for Inclusive Education. 15 of us NGOs came together, worked with SSA, and tried to build the competence of the system to promote inclusion.
In your view, what are the essential elements that constitute quality education?
When it comes to education, traditionally or going back, etc., parents came, they left their children in school, and that was the end. Parents were not encouraged to be a partner in the education system. But I think today's world has changed, and to be true to the development, parents must form an integral part of education, because children are with us, say 5-6 hours a day. The remaining time they're with their families, they're with their siblings, they're with their parents, they have their own culture. So this whole focus on culturally responsible teaching and learning is so important. And so it's very important that parents become partners in the education system. To a certain extent, we cannot do this because many of our children are from remote villages, they're staying in a hostel. But what we do is we do visit the families, we encourage parents, no matter how poor they are, to come into the school. And then, of course, the parents of day scholars, they participate in everything. Our gate is always open. Parents come in and sit in the classrooms. Parents come in and support the teachers. Teachers go and visit the home. And that is how you can actually design for inclusion. Inclusion is not only designing content, it's also designing the environment. Environment means the environment in the school, the environment in the home, the environment in the neighborhood. So the way we look at it is that, whom we teach is at the center. Where we teach is the environment. What we teach is the curriculum. How we teach is the instruction. How we assess is the assessment, and how we train teachers. If all these five sectors are not at the service of the child at the center, then we are not doing justice to education. So the parents and the environment and the community and the culture is vital to quality education.
What further steps do you believe can be taken to advance progress in disability inclusion?
Once a year, we have a festival of inclusion where the parents come in, other schools come in, other teachers come in. We have a festival of music. We've had festivals of cooking where other schools come in, parents come in, and so parents become partners. And now it's very important. Even in a place like Shillong, parents are educated. They have their perceptions, they have their ideas, and we have to listen to them. Particularly today, in the age of social media, ICT, digital learning becomes a very strong means of creating equity. A very, very important part of community-based rehabilitation is empowerment of people with disability. And so initially about 17 years ago, we started what is called a legal awareness cell, to learn ourselves about the law, to keep updated about various conventions and laws that were coming, to organize programs where people with disability and even parents groups would come together and learn about their rights and how to advocate for them. And say, for example, in Bethany, one of our most a decision that I think will go a long way was for the management to appoint a person with blindness as the headmistress of the school. And after that, she's now the executive director of the whole programs of the society. And so in the legal awareness cell, and in which we then changed to the mainstreaming unit, the whole focus was what is available in the mainstream, and then how do we train individuals, disabled persons, organizations to advocate for their right to be included in all government programs, in education, health, in livelihoods, in social, and the right to vote, the right to for transport, etc. And these are groups that are in the villages who can go to their BDO, who can go to their district level and say, look, we are not getting this. We are speaking for ourselves. So rather, we speak for them. They spoke for themselves. And we had a lot of trainings for them through the CBR network of 15, 16 organizations where they would come together, be trained, and then at the end of the training, call in government officials and then, speak to them. What I want to also appeal to people is that don't look at impairment as a disadvantage. We need to look at leveraging the strengths of people, including persons with disability, and not to look at them as challenges to be overcome. So that, and you need to bring in flexibility and choice in the system without diluting the goals. The goal should be the same, but the way to reach the goal may take a little longer time, but that flexibility and choice must be there.